Enjoy.
Thank you. Brendan.
Under the dazzling flashes of cameras and the murmur of red carpet whispers, Caitriona Balfe carried a grace so poised that few could ever imagine the weight she bore beneath that luminous surface. A secret life stitched together by silence, grief, and quiet endurance. To the world, she was the embodiment of elegance, an actress whose every glance and movement seemed carved from serenity. But behind those steady eyes lay years of scars, both visible and unseen, that shaped the woman she became and haunted the life she lived. Born in the raw chill of rural Ireland, near the rugged borderlands where the wind could howl like a lament through the cracks of unglassed windows, Caitriona's childhood was one marked not by comfort but by endurance. Her family's small home, dimly lit by the sputtering flame of kerosene lamps, carried the echoes of her mother's nightly prayers, soft, trembling petitions for warmth, health, and another day of survival. It was in that fragile world that one night, at just 6 years old, Caitriona fell from a rotted wooden ladder and struck her head on the cold, dirt floor. Her mother, alone in that remote cottage, with no doctor, no neighbors to call for help, pressed trembling hands against her daughter's bleeding head and prayed until dawn. By morning, Caitriona awoke, her head bandaged in cloth, her eyes dazed, and though she would live, something inside her would never fully mend. The scar healed on her skin, but inside her mind, something lingered. A fear of bright light, of exposure, of the invasive glare that years later would return in another form, through the flood of film set spotlights and camera lenses that could pierce her memory like the blade of a razor. Even decades later, whenever a director called for a close-up, she would feel her pulse quicken, her breath catch, and her heart slip back to that cold room where she had once lain half-conscious under her mother's whispered prayers. In her teenage years, she found a kind of refuge in friendship. A girl named Aisling, radiant and mischievous, who became the sister of her soul. Together they raced bicycles along the Irish lanes that wound between meadows, daring each other to ride faster than the wind, singing into the dusk, laughing until their stomachs ached. They talked of dreams, of love, of escape, promising each other that someday they would see the world beyond the rolling hills. But one stormy night shattered that fragile innocence. A small party, a rain-slicked road, a car that never reached home. Aisling had called Caitriona that night, her voice lost beneath the sound of rain hammering against the window. Caitriona had seen her name flash on the small, glowing screen but, tired and distracted, had not picked up. She told herself she would call in the morning. That morning never came. The call she answered instead was from the hospital. Aisling had been in an accident, and by dawn she was gone. For years, that single moment became a wound she would not show the world. Every unreturned message, every silence, every goodbye since then carried a shadow of that night. She learned to hide her sorrow behind a calm smile, afraid that if she ever let it slip, it would reveal too much, not only about her friend, but about the guilt that clung to her heart like frost that never melted. In the years that followed, as her career began to take shape, she fell in love quietly, away from the gossip columns and flashing lenses. He was a French photographer, a man with salt in his hair and laughter that seemed to break sunlight into sound. They met at a small gallery in Paris, where she had gone to escape the noise of auditions and expectation. He captured beauty not for fame but for truth, and in his presence, Caitriona felt seen not as a rising actress but as a woman, flawed, tender, real. Their love was simple, unpublicized, and tender. Photographs tucked into books, voice messages in the early hours, sea walks beneath violet skies. But love, in the orbit of ambition, has its cruel gravity. Her work demanded constant travel, and his projects took him far across continents. For a while, they managed long-distance calls, shared memories, plans for a future postponed. Until one night, from an unfamiliar number, came his voice trembling in the wind. "You deserve something greater than waiting for me." There was no anger, no betrayal, only the sadness of someone who loved too much to hold on. She stood by her hotel window after the call, watching the Paris lights blur, whispering goodbye into the glass as if he could still hear her. From then on, every seaside scene she filmed, every plane she boarded, carried the ghost of that love. Not bitter, not broken, but mournful, as though some part of her heart had remained standing on that empty shore. Fame came, slowly then all at once, with Outlander. Her portrayal of Claire Fraser captured millions. Yet even as she stood beneath international praise, the shadows of her past remained with her. The cameras adored her, but she had learned early that adoration often comes at the price of silence. On set, surrounded by lights and crew, she kept her composure, professional, kind, unshakable. But behind the scenes, something darker had stirred. During one season of filming, a supporting actor, someone the public viewed as charming, even harmless, had crossed a line in a moment when no cameras were rolling. His words and gestures left her shaken, but she told no one. She feared that speaking out might brand her as difficult, that the world might twist her truth into scandal. Sam Heughan, her closest co-star, noticed her unease. He had always watched over her quietly, their friendship built on mutual trust, unspoken understanding, and the kind of respect that transcended gossip. One night, while the crew packed up, he heard soft sobs behind a set wall and realized it was her. He wanted to confront the man, to defend her publicly, but when he approached her later, she stopped him, tears still drying on her cheeks. "Don't interfere, Sam," she whispered, "or you'll lose your job." That night, neither of them slept. Sam sat alone in his trailer, feeling fury he couldn't express, and guilt for a silence that was not his to break. Caitriona, meanwhile, washed her face and returned to set the next morning, her smile impeccable, her voice steady, as though nothing had ever happened. The burden of family loss arrived just as her professional life seemed most triumphant. Her father, the man who had once come home from the fields smelling of earth and rain, was diagnosed with liver cancer. Caitriona flew home between filming schedules, sitting by his bedside as he weakened. She read him lines from her scripts, hoping he might feel proud, hoping he might hold on long enough to see her next premiere. But as his condition worsened, she found herself torn between two worlds, the glittering world of celebrity and the quiet, fading one of family. When he finally passed, she stood at the funeral beneath the same gray Irish sky that had once hung over her childhood home. The press never knew. She returned to work days later, her grief folded neatly behind professionalism. Only Sam noticed the redness in her eyes, the way she lingered before takes, staring at nothing. For her, the loss was a return to origins, to that girl who had once fallen from the ladder and learned that pain, if hidden well enough, could be mistaken for strength. And yet, through all of it, the accidents, the losses, the betrayals, Caitriona's resilience became her quiet rebellion. Every role she played carried whispers of the woman she had been. The child who survived, the friend who mourned, the lover who let go, the actress who endured. Sam Heughan once said in an interview that she had eyes that know too much, and perhaps he was right. Behind her performances lay the unsaid, the ache of memory, the trace of fear when lights flared too bright, the way she could make silence itself speak. Fame, for her, was never about escape but transformation, a way to turn private sorrow into public art. Yet those who knew her best, the few who had seen her without makeup, without defenses, spoke of her as someone who still carried a childlike gentleness, someone who still stopped to help a stray cat, who still wrote birthday letters by hand, who still believed that love, even when lost, was worth remembering. But secrets have their way of returning. The industry, ever hungry for scandal, began to whisper again. About the tears she shed backstage, about the chemistry between her and Sam that some said went deeper than fiction, about the nights they stayed late rehearsing when everyone else had gone. And though neither ever confirmed anything, those who looked closely could see the truth not in words but in gestures. The way he looked at her when she wasn't speaking, the way she turned toward him even in silence. Their bond, born of shared pain and mutual protection, had become something larger than either of them could control. Yet both knew that in Hollywood, the moment truth becomes public, it stops belonging to you. So they guarded it, whatever it was, behind professionalism, behind interviews that said nothing, behind a friendship that was, perhaps, love in its purest, most disciplined form. And so, at premieres, beneath the lights that once terrified her, Caitriona Balfe still stands, graceful, enigmatic, luminous, smiling for cameras that will never capture what her eyes have truly seen. Beneath that serenity lies a story of endurance written in invisible ink. The child who survived the fall, the friend who carried guilt, the woman who loved and lost, the actress who endured what she could never say. A tragedy, perhaps, but also a triumph. Not of fame or fortune, but of quiet strength. And for Sam Heughan, forever drawn into the orbit of her pain and her brilliance, it remains a bond sealed not by confession, but by something deeper. The unspoken understanding that sometimes, the most haunting love stories are the ones that never have to be told.
I think it's what I wake up thinking, it's what I go to bed thinking.
Every day.
Every day of
Every
my
day of my
life.
life. I worked at an art gallery.
Every time the plane rose above the clouds, Caitriona Balfe would grip the armrest and whisper to herself, "Is this going to be the last trip?" It was not fear of flying that made her chest tighten, but the thought of her father, frail, unwell, waiting in that quiet Irish home surrounded by the misty fields of her childhood. She loved him with a tenderness few ever saw, a love that existed beyond words and beyond the glamour of her profession. She never announced his illness to the public, not out of pride, but out of fear that fans would turn sympathy into spectacle, that the media would romanticize her grief, that her achievements would be shadowed by pity rather than respect. So she carried it silently, appearing radiant on camera, her laughter effortless, her grace intact, while inside she lived each flight, each interview, each premiere with the dread that one day she would return to find him gone. The only person she ever told was Sam Heughan. One night, under the muted glow of a hotel lamp, she broke the silence, her voice trembling as she told him that her father's condition was worsening. Sam listened without interrupting, and when she finished, he simply said, "You shouldn't go through this alone." From that night on, he flew back to Ireland with her whenever filming allowed, sitting with her father for hours, listening to stories about her childhood, about the days before the fame, before the cameras, before the girl with dreams became a woman burdened by them. When her father passed away, Caitriona appeared before the press with perfect poise, smiling for the cameras, answering questions with her usual eloquence, her voice steady. Yet that night, in the sterile quiet of her hotel room, she lay awake listening to the clock tick, the silence around her too heavy to bear. No tears fell, only the soft, hollow rhythm of breath between sighs. Fame, for Caitriona, was a double-edged sword. It gave her recognition, but it also carved invisible wounds. Her relationship with her fans was a strange mixture of gratitude and quiet pain. Among the countless letters of admiration that arrived, one stood out, a handwritten note that pierced deeper than any headline ever could. It said, "You don't deserve your awards. You're just pretty. You act like a statue. Beautiful but without heart." Those words, etched in ink, sliced through her composure like a knife. Every time she failed to win a nomination or lost to another actor, it wasn't just disappointment she felt, but the echo of that accusation, that she was only a surface, not a soul. Sam once told her, "They only see the shell. They don't hear your voice." But the reassurance couldn't silence the noise in her head. At night, she would scroll through social media, reading comments hidden in corners of the internet that the public never sees. Cruel jokes, twisted narratives, strangers reducing her to her looks, her accent, her body. She never replied, never lashed out, but the words stayed. They burrowed into her thoughts and resurfaced when she stood before a mirror, rehearsing a line, wondering if they were right. The scrutiny became relentless. With fame came expectations that left no room for humanity. Her every appearance was dissected. Her hair too simple, her accent too thick, her tone too serious, her opinions too political. If she laughed, they called her unserious. If she stayed quiet, they called her cold. Once, after a long day of shooting, she gave an interview where exhaustion made her speech falter slightly. The tabloids mocked her, saying she couldn't even speak English properly. It wasn't just unfair, it was cruel. There were days she would stare into the mirror and ask, "Am I still the lead in my own life, or just an extra in someone else's story?" Her beauty, once a source of confidence, became a trap. She learned to perfect her smile, to regulate her tone, to move carefully through interviews like a dancer on glass. Graceful, controlled, but always aware that one misstep could draw blood. Few people knew that behind the calm exterior, Caitriona carried a secret habit to cope with the pressure, a ritual she never shared. On nights before an emotionally demanding scene or before a grand premiere, she would pour herself a small glass of whiskey. Never too much, just enough to soften the edges of her thoughts. It wasn't about indulgence, it was about survival. She called it my quiet courage. She didn't want to depend on it, didn't want anyone to know, because in an industry where vulnerability is weakness, even the smallest confession could become ammunition.